Imagine waking up in a sea of shaved heads, where your mane is replaced by a cold, numerical prison code. Imagine 40,000 men, sitting in absolute silence, completely submissive.
Every drop of sweat and every facial tattoo tells a story of a life now erased by concrete and steel. The gaze of a prisoner reflects the heavy combat boot of a guard, a symbol of total, unyielding authority. Moving to Rwanda, where thousands are packed so tightly they must stand in a toxic mixture of human waste. Here, the flesh literally rots from their feet as they wait for a death that comes far too slowly. Microscopic views of gangrene show the visceral reality of a prison that was never designed for human survival. Life in the open-air pit of Gitarama is a slow descent into a physical and biological nightmare of filth. In the shadow of Libya, human beings are sold in dark garages for the price of a mid-range smartphone. Chains rattle against the concrete floor as men are inspected like cattle, their dignity stripped by armed warlords. A single shaft of light illuminates the iron shackles, highlighting the absolute despair of the modern slave trade. Traffickers shuffle passports like playing cards, deciding which soul is worth more on the brutal black market lot. Venezuela's La Sabaneta is a kingdom of blood where guards never enter and the rusted machete is law. Firelight flickers on makeshift blades, reflecting the desperate eyes of those who will not survive the coming night. A prisoner carves his name into his own skin, a final attempt to remain human in a lawless void. Gang bosses dine on steak, while meters away, men hang in hammocks over floors covered in raw human sewage. Russia's Black Dolphin is a psychological abyss where the light never fades and the silence screams in your ears. Prisoners move like broken dolls, blinded and bent, knowing they will never see the sun without a cage again. A black blindfold and a forced stress position ensure that the mind breaks long before the body finally fails. The stone dolphin stands as a cold warning to the monsters who have finally met a much greater beast. In Myanmar's cyber factories, the blue light of the monitor is the only window to the world you're robbing. If you fail your scam quota, the electric shock baton reminds you that you are just a ghost machine. Dozens of young men sit zip-tied to their desks, their sunken eyes reflecting a high-tech, digital era of slavery. Corporate trash piles high outside office buildings that serve as fortresses for the most dangerous private military armies. Haiti is a city-sized cage where gangs released 4,000 killers to burn the very concept of order away. Smoke from burning tires fills the lungs of a capital that has officially become a zone of absolute lawlessness. Armed men with machetes rule the deserted marketplaces, turning the streets into a literal stage for a post-apocalyptic nightmare. The airport is closed, the city is silent, and the only music left is the rhythmic crack of gunfire. Your phone's battery was born in the red mud of Congo, dug by children whose hands are raw. Deep in unsupported tunnels, the earth groans, ready to swallow those who trade their lives for toxic cobalt ore. A 7-year-old boy carries a sack of rocks, his eyes reflecting a deep, old-world fatigue that no child should know. Red dust clogs the lungs of thousands, sorting ore under the watchful, indifferent eyes of armed, predatory militia members. In Rio's favelas, one wrong turn in your navigator puts you under the golden sights of a teenage sniper. Behind reinforced glass, police watch a labyrinth of brick where life is worth less than a single copper bullet. A no navigator sign is sprayed in blood-red paint, a final warning before the urban trap snaps shut tightly. A mother pulls her child under the bed as the heavy thud of a police helicopter signals coming war. Everest is a beautiful graveyard where mummified climbers serve as neon road signs for those seeking a deadly summit. In the death zone, survival means ignoring the screams of the falling because help is a luxury nobody has. Frozen jackets flutter in the wind like forgotten prayer flags, marking the spots where ambition met its cold end. Frostbite turns fingers into black stone, a physical price paid for the hubris of challenging a mountain that kills. The Karakoram Highway is a thin ledge over a 1,000-meter drop where the mountains devour both machines and drivers. Every kilometer was paid for in blood, leaving rusted wrecks at the bottom as a warning to the brave. A truck hangs half off the edge of a cliff, the driver's frozen terror captured in a single haunting image. Landslides erase the road in seconds, burying everything in a cloud of gray dust that tastes like ground stone. Thailand's Bang Kwang is the tiger that eats men alive, beginning with heavy chains welded to their ankles. In the sweltering heat, prisoners share a single bowl of gray mush, their skin growing over the rusted iron. 3 months in shackles creates a horrific fusion of metal and flesh, a biological prison within a concrete cage. A man stares at a bowl of thin rice soup, knowing this is his only fuel for another day. Honduras is a country divided by invisible lines, where crossing the street can be an instant, violent death sentence. Everyone pays the war tax, from the bus driver to the grandmother, buying another hour of breath from the gangs. Steel bars cover every window, turning every home into a self-imposed prison in a city belonging to the gangs. A teenager with a golden gun represents the peak of a social hierarchy built entirely on fear and murder. The silence of the CECOT hangar at midnight is a chilling testament to the power of a merciless state.
Bruised knuckles and white shorts are the only uniform in a place where your past is a forbidden memory. A guard's hand rests on a black baton, ready to enforce a peace that feels exactly like a war. The sheer scale of the concrete walls ensures that even hope cannot find a way to scale the perimeter. Digging into the Chuysky Trakt reveals the skeletal remains of those ukatanych vasfalt during the dark Gulag years. Snowstorms hide the ghosts of prisoners who hacked at frozen rock until their hearts simply stopped in the cold. A skeletal hand clutching a rotted wooden tool remains the only monument to thousands buried under the Siberian highway. Rusted transport trucks sit in the forest like skeletons of an era that sacrificed souls for a bit of infrastructure. In Libya, passports are shuffled like cards by traffickers who decide which soul is worth more on the market. A migrant's lips are cracked from thirst, his ribs pressing against skin as he waits for a rescue. A person is dragged into a dark van, their screams muffled by a heavy gloved hand in a desert. A stack of dirty currency is exchanged for a human life, a transaction that happens every day in silence. Desperation drives men to murder over a single bottle of water inside the overcrowded, stinking cells of Venezuela. Gang bosses live in luxury, while meters away, men hang in hammocks over floors covered in human sewage. Sharpening rebar on a stone floor creates the soundtrack of a war that is fought every day inside. A hidden phone films the horror, sending ripples of truth out from a place where the sun never shines. The swan dive walk is a forced humiliation, breaking the spirit before the body reaches the solitary cell. A guard's heavy boot on a prisoner's shadow symbolizes a state that owns your soul and your silhouette. The light in a Russian cell never turns off, burning the eyes of a man who has no name. A guard looks through the steel eye of a door, ensuring the prisoner remains in a posture of defeat. Myanmar's scams are fueled by energy drinks and desperation, a digital hell built on the suffering of thousands. Standing on one leg for hours is a refined torture designed to snap the willpower of the cyber slaves. The reflection of barbed wire in a computer monitor marks the boundary of a very modern kind of prison. Confiscated passports lie in a pile of trash, the only evidence that these slaves once had a real home. Roadblocks in Haiti are built from the charred remains of those who dared to defy the local gang lord.
A child's toy in a smoldering street is the final punctuation mark on the death of a nation's capital. Gang members ride motorcycles through the ruins, waving handguns as if they were trophies of a conquered land. A police station burns in the background, a symbol of a government that has lost all control of reality. Mothers sort cobalt ore with babies on their backs, the red dust ensuring the next generation is born sick. The open-pit mines look like literal wounds in the jungle, bleeding red earth and human life for our batteries. A miner descends on a knotted vine, his only light a candle, praying the earth doesn't collapse on him. Red dust clogs the lungs, a silent killer that takes the life of a miner before he turns 30. Snipers watch the checkpoints, their eyes fixed on the scope, waiting for a reason to pull the gold trigger. A police officer's tears are hidden behind a helmet as he realizes he is fighting a war he cannot win. A child's backpack with a bullet hole lies in the dirt, a witness to a conflict that has no end. The favela at dawn is a place of mist and gunshots, where the day begins with a struggle. Boots stuck in the ice of Everest are the only markers for bodies that have been blown into oblivion. The summit is a trash heap of broken dreams, oxygen tanks, and frozen remains of the world's most elite. A tattered prayer flag frozen into the ice next to a climber's glove is a symbol of lost hope. The Rainbow Valley is a macabre spectacle where frozen jackets flutter in the wind like forgotten, tattered neon signs. Wheels hanging over a cliff edge are the last thing a driver sees before the mountain finally claims him. Every hairpin turn on the Karakoram is a gamble with death, where the house always wins in the end. A heavy boulder falls from a cliff, narrowly missing a bus filled with people who have no other choice. The scale of the mountains makes the trucks look like tiny, fragile toys in a landscape of jagged stone. The final clanking of leg irons on concrete signals the end of a journey that began with a mistake. Humanity fades in the humid, stagnant air of the taiga, leaving only a number and a rusted iron chain. A bamboo cane hits the bars of a cell, a sound that signals a long night of terror. The skin growing over metal shackles is a horrific image of a body that has accepted its long captivity. A tattoo of a tear on a man's face in Honduras represents a murder committed for a gang. A family lives in a house where every window is covered by double-thick steel bars and heavy padlocks. A mural depicts a gang leader as a saint, a terrifying distortion of faith in a city of violence. A bus driver hands over his daily earnings to a teenager with a gun, a routine tax on life. The surgical indifference of the prison clinic is often more terrifying than the violence of the cells themselves. A massive pile of white shorts represents the total loss of individuality in a state-controlled concrete desert. A guard's finger rests on the trigger of a gas launcher, a tool for maintaining a fragile order. The sheer number of surveillance cameras ensures that there is no corner of the prison left unmonitored. The road of bones under the moonlight looks like a long, pale skeleton stretching through the dark mountains. A rusted iron shackle found in the mud is a relic of an era that sacrificed everything for power. A Gulag prisoner collapses in the snow, his body becoming part of the foundation of a modern highway. The silhouette of a watchtower against a red sunset marks the boundary between the living and the dead. A migrant in Libya writes his name on a warehouse wall, a desperate attempt to not be forgotten. A human trafficker counts a stack of euros while his victims sit in the dirt behind him, broken. A person is forced into a dark shipping container, the door closing on their last chance at freedom. A child in a detention center holds an empty bowl, his eyes reflecting a hunger that is eternal. A prisoner in La Sabaneta sleeps in a hammock 3 meters above a floor covered in human sewage. A gang leader's funeral inside a prison is a chaotic celebration of a life lived by the gun. Makeshift weapons are sharpened on stone floors, the sound echoing through the crowded corridors of a Venezuelan hell. A doctor in a prison uses salt to treat a gunshot wound, the only medicine available in the void. A Russian prisoner's hand reaches for black bread through a small slot in a heavy, reinforced steel door. The sound of a heavy iron bolt sliding into place is the definitive, cold sound of a life ending. A 4-meter cell is the entire world for a man who has forgotten the color of the sky. A dog handler leads a blinded prisoner through a sterile white corridor, a scene of total, absolute control. A Myanmar slave works with a heavy weight tied around his neck, his head slumped forward in exhaustion. A high-tech control room monitors every movement of the cyberslaves, leaving no room for a single mistake. An energy drink can next to a passport torn to pieces symbolizes the reality of the scam centers. A person jumps from a high office window, choosing the abyss over another day of digital, forced slavery. The silhouette of barbecue stands in front of a massive fire, a demon ruling over a ruined capital. A deserted playground in Haiti is a haunting image of a childhood stolen by a war without end. A roadblock made of charred car hushes and human remains marks the boundary of a gang's lawless territory. A gang member wears a stolen police uniform, a final insult to the concept of a functional state. A miner in the Congo mines in a small crevice, his body curled into a ball for warmth. The red, dusty footprint of a child on a clean floor is a silent accusation of our greed. A child drinks contaminated water from a plastic jug, the only thing available in the red mud. A massive landslide buries a group of workers, the red earth looking like an open, bleeding wound.
A Rio favela scout uses a mirror to signal the arrival of police to his armed gang. The sight of a queveron with a large hole from a high-caliber round is a sign of war. A sniper watches a checkpoint through a gap in a brick wall, his finger steady on the trigger. A child's backpack lying in a puddle of dirty water is the final image of a lost generation. A climber's hand reaches for a rope, the skin gray and frozen, the fingers unable to move anymore. A ghost-like figure of a climber in a blue jacket sits perfectly preserved by the eternal, killing cold. The summit of Everest is a heap of frozen trash and broken dreams, a monument to human hubris. Oxygen tanks litter the snow, empty containers of a life that was lost at the top of the world. A truck driver on the Karakoram prays before a dangerous section, his life hanging by a thin thread. A landslide buries a section of the road, the asphalt simply vanishing into a cloud of gray dust. A truck's wheels hang half off the edge of a cliff, a moment of pure, unadulterated cinematic terror. The face of a Karakoram worker is caked in gray stone dust, a mask of total, silent exhaustion. A prisoner in Thailand is sprayed with a high-pressure hose, a cold and humiliating form of cleaning. The sound of 100 spoons hitting plastic bowls is the rhythmic heartbeat of a life in cages. Leg irons welded to the bone create a horrific fusion of man and machine in a Thai hell. The humid, stagnant air of the tiger prison is a weight that breaks the spirit of everyone inside. A tax collector in Honduras walks into a store with a gun, a routine part of the day. A tattoo of a tombstone on a teenager's neck marks the end of a very short, violent life. The interior of a Honduran prison is a chaotic maze of iron cages and desperate, forgotten men. A family huddled in the dark listens to the gunfire outside, praying the steel bars will hold tonight. We have reached the center of the abyss,
where the world is a cage and everyone is a prisoner. Humanity fades into a numerical code, a final warning from the darkest corners of our planet's reality.
Move along, citizen. This area is restricted.
Silence.